Hello and welcome to the Whitehead Files, a special Whitehead Files on this day, the 6th of November. And why is this day special, the 6th of November 2024? Well, it's the day after the US presidential election. I found it very strange that the UK general election was on American Independence Day, but yet the US presidential election was on bonfire night. And for our US friends who are listening, bonfire night is celebrated here in the UK to do with Guy Fawkes, who wanted to blow up the government, which is bizarre thing to celebrate, but that's where we are. So the results are in. And to join me to talk about the results today is a good friend of mine, Carole Copeland Thomas. Now, Carole is a speaker, trainer, and a global thought leader. And she's a business owner, and she's been a business owner since 1987. She moderates and discusses key issues affecting our global marketplace. And since 1987, Carole has had her finger on the pulse for issues affecting working professionals and consults with industry leaders on a regular basis, from speaking to Federal Highway Administration, Hewlett Packard, Cargill, to name a few. And she's been interviewing experts from around the globe. Carole knows how to analyse and the dynamics of a changing marketplace. In relation to state and national elections, Carole, a 3-time state convention delegate, served as a town coordinator in November 2006, successful election of Devil Patrick, Massachusetts, first African-American governor. She also served as an active tri-state volunteer for the 2008 campaign for President Barack Obama. As I bring her into the studio, I want to say that she has been campaigning tirelessly for the 2024 election, and I know that she did so 2020 as well. Carole Copeland Thomas, welcome to the Whitehead Files. And I was going to put black on, but I thought, no, we'll stick to the colours that we want and the patterns that we want to stick to. Welcome. And I'm going to ask you a question. How are you feeling?
First of all, thank you very much. You are a very dear friend, Carol Ann. Thank you for having me on the show. I sort of mixed it up, so I do have a black blouse on for obvious reasons, but I have red on. Red is an action color. I'm also a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, so that is an action color, and we believe in social action. And now we have more work than ever to do because of the election results. I am okay. I was shocked and mortified in 2016 when Donald Trump won the first time. Surprised all of us. We all assumed that Hillary Clinton was going to win. So that was a big shock for me. 2020, obviously, Joe Biden won, so we were very happy. But this was like a gut punch. It was something that you didn't want to really think about. You thought that Kamala Harris had enough pull, enough clout, enough points and votes in the right places, particularly the 7 swing states, so that she could have pulled off this election. No one thought this was going to be a walk in the park where she was going to run away with the vote count. We thought it was going to be close and tight. It was, but we'll have this conversation. It was tight and close for different reasons.
Gosh. And where were you when you got the results? Where were you? Because I know we've got a 5-hour difference?
With us, 5 hours, yes. Yeah. I started my day off, as I've done for many presidential elections, in the state of New Hampshire. I live in Massachusetts, and then you can go to different parts of New Hampshire it's an hour's drive, an hour and a half's drive. So I decided to schedule myself to work in the office for the Democrats yesterday morning in Nashua, New Hampshire. What was so amazing, Carole Ann, is that when I got up there now, New Hampshire tends to be a purple state, meaning it can go for the Republicans or the Democrats. It just depends. Now, for the last 3 cycles for president, they've gone for the Democratic candidate. So I was looking to extend that, obviously, for this purpose. But when I got off the highway, I looked to my left and my right, and I saw nothing but Harris signs, yard signs that were in the yard. And that was very encouraging for me. I made a video before I actually went in the office, just talking about all the signs that I saw. I saw more Harris signs than I saw Trump signs. So I was actually in the office. It's called phone banking, where I was making phone calls to registered Democrats in New Hampshire, encouraging them to vote yesterday. And the people who I talked to actually were either voting or they had voted. And that was very encouraging. Fortunately, last night, we did bring in New Hampshire. I forget what the spread was, but they did vote overwhelmingly for Kamala Harris. I then left New Hampshire and went and joined my sorority sisters because we're very, very focused on social action work. And so we stood respectfully so. There's a distance that you have to stand away from the polling place. We chose the recreational community center in the heart of our community, our Black and brown neighborhoods. And so we passed out water and chips. And people were very proactive. They were very excited. There were lots of people voting. And again, we felt very good about that. So then I left and went to the big Massachusetts watch party. That's what it's called, where all the politicians gather. There are several watch parties going on in the community, but I wanted to go to this one because Senator Elizabeth Warren she won her race. She was one of our speakers, and then other political officials were there. It was a very large gathering. And as I sat there and talked to people who I knew, I just didn't have a very good feeling. The numbers weren't coming in the way we wanted them to come in. And obviously, as you know, I left that party, ultimately went home, kept the television on. And then by 5:30 Eastern, that's when the announcement was made that Donald Trump had won Pennsylvania, and that took him over. So now he has about 276 electoral votes to Harris's 223 votes. Now, the significant thing about this, Carole Ann, is that in past presidential campaigns with Trump, he never got 47% of the vote. This time, but in 2016, he won enough electoral votes because of Michigan voting for him, that's where he became president because of the swing states. Fast forward to now, 47% of the vote was had by Kamala Harris, and he achieved 51% of the vote in the right swing states. We have 3 or 4 more swing states that have not been called yet as of this recording, as of this interview, but he had a commanding lead, and so now he is our president-elect.
I've spoken to many British women this morning, leading up to us having a conversation. Some are outraged. Some are saying, I'm just being silent for a bit and absorbing it. And one of the things I put out there to them was, how will our new Prime Minister, because he's only been in office since July, Sir Keir Starmer, who's a former North London human rights lawyer, gel with your new brash New York billionaire president? It's going to be interesting.
It's good for the world. I've heard from friends who we know from the UK who have reached out to me asking me what's going on with the election other people I know in other parts of the world. You can rest assured that every world leader, regardless of their conservatism or their liberalism, they are recalibrating what their relationship is going to be with Donald Trump, because Trump is now emboldened. He has won. He has a cast of characters that's very frightening in terms of how he will bring them into his administration. So again, your prime minister and Sarma and other prime ministers and presidents around the world are definitely rethinking the relationship that they're going to have with Donald Trump, with the exception of Vladimir Putin, who has been an ally of Donald Trump for years, and now I think will almost be a co-president with him. We Americans are concerned, and I'll tell you in a few minutes. We're concerned about these relationships that were dismissed, these relationships with Kim Jong Un in North Korea, who will obviously have a very forceful relationship with Donald Trump, and other autocrats, Viktor Orban in Hungary and others. These are going to be the leaders who will align themselves with Trump to our detriment.
Yeah. Either way, it's going to be a roller coaster ride, because, of course, I remember how it was with Trump from his first term and the then Prime Minister, Theresa May. So so you have some points here, some other points that you wanted to get across. Because I know that 81% of college students, 54% of women, an astounding 86% of Black voters stood behind Kamala Harris. Can I just say that one thing I picked up is, I might not be using the phrase right, but when I say misogynoir, I say misogynoir in relation to Black men who are misogynistic. Some people use it in a different way.
You're definitely on to something, Carole, and I want to give you 6 points from my perspective that contributed to a Trump win. And I'll do a 7th one that I'll put at the top. Number 1, the reliance and the over-reliance on polls that could be misleading in many ways caused the defeat of Kamala Harris. I'm not saying that the polls were wrong, but they were in some ways misleading. Now, the poll that came out right before the election, the Iowa poll that was contributed and created by a pollster in the state of Iowa, which said that Kamala Harris was going to, at least in the state of Iowa and perhaps in similar white states, would have a 3-point advantage over Trump, was misleading. That was not correct. And this is a pollster who's been very accurate with previous polls. So we looked too much to that kind of poll as to the cherry on top in terms of her winning, and it did not see itself through. So the 6 pieces that I'm looking at, number 1 was the power and the influence of the Latino voter, particularly the Black Latino voter. We're talking about those who come from Central and South America, obviously of Spanish descent in many ways. The machismo, the misogynistic cultural dynamics really played themselves out with particularly the Latino male men who voted. We thought that Kamala Harris had done a better job winning them over. We thought, particularly with probably the 12 to 20% of Black men who also supported Donald Trump, we thought the numbers had been reduced and not as large as some people played them to be. But clearly there are cultural dynamics, There are misogynistic dynamics, and there are racial dynamics also that played a very large factor with this constituency, as you saw it particularly in Pennsylvania and other swing states where you have pockets of Hispanic, Latino members who live in those communities, and obviously were throwing their allegiance to Donald Trump. Let me do a subset of that, because you mentioned that 54% of women, not 20% of women, or not, should I say 80% of women supporting Kamala Harris, but only 54%, which is in alignment with how they have voted for Trump in the past. White women have, almost half of white women supported Donald Trump yesterday, and obviously with the early voting. And the question there is, when you look at the abortion rights activities that have taken place, when you look at the words that have been used about women, when you look at the Carole case against Donald Trump, and Stormy Daniels, et cetera, you would think that more women, particularly with the abortion case, more white women would have supported Kamala Harris, and clearly they did not. So you've got the combination of white men who supported him more than her. You have white women who also supported her less than half so, or at least halfway so. You have Latino men, 45, 50%, and then somewhere between 12 and 20% of Black men. That combination in different parts of the country led to a Trump victory. That's number one. And number two, connected to that, is the perception of the economy. The economy in the United States, contrary to false claims, misinformation, is very strong. The Economist magazine said it's the strongest in the world. The Democrats have never had a great way of communicating the strength of the economy and answering for the price of bread and butter and milk that is rather high in this country. Gas prices have gone down. They couldn't talk about that. Food prices have not been in alignment with a strong economy. So the lack of being able to communicate that message cost the Democrats. And that is one of the things that Donald Trump harped on over and over again. We heard people just repeatedly talk about, well, I received a stimulus check in 2020 when Trump was in office. Well, that stimulus check was actually passed by Congress and held up from distribution because Trump wanted his name on that check. So even then, 4 years ago, he manipulated that process. The checks were $1,000 at best, maybe $1,500. So you couldn't live your whole year on that. It was just, you could put the money in the bank and draw interest on it. But he used that as a political ploy. He is a master manipulator. And that ploy certainly benefited him in terms of the economy. Immigrants, number three, this whole component of I'm going to build a wall. We're going to have a wall built. And in this case, Mexico was going to pay for it in 2016. Did not happen. Partially, the wall was built by our funding. And then no clear immigration path, no clear bill that he stopped. There was a bipartisan bill in the spring that would have been passed for immigration reform. And he made calls to his buddies in Congress, in the Senate, and they did not pass that bill because he wanted to run on immigration. And so that's number three. Now, I guess I'll leave my comments for a minute. Number four, the lack of understanding the rural communities, and I'm talking about the Democrats, not understanding people who live in rural communities. They are hurting in many ways. Farming communities aren't what they used to be. I just talked to somebody yesterday when I was phone banking about parts of Massachusetts where the economy in rural areas isn't as strong as it should be. So you have this factor, all these factors going in with a rural community who would then put their hope and promise in Donald Trump. Number five,
that is the same in the UK. It's same in the UK with the rural communities
Yes.
and the farming community.
Yep. And number 5, communicating to the masses. Trump is a promoter. He is a marketeer. He is someone who understands how people react, and he gives them language where they will react, regardless of how vulgar, how crude the language is. He knows that whatever he says will be bought by the masses because they will say, oh, he's not going to deport 12 million immigrants who are here in this country. Oh, no, he's not going to go after his enemies, political enemies, and put them in jail. Whatever he says, they look at rhetorically and tell themselves that he is not going to do that. I think that's where this is going to go really badly and go south for our country come January 20th. And then number 6 is the rejection of cultural norms, heritage, and standards with particularly people of color in power positions. Let's go back to 2008. There was a horrible recession. We had banks that failed here.
And
The
across the
Bush
globe.
administration and all over the world, yes. The Bush administration was not able to take control of the economy. That is why Barack Obama got elected, because he was being elected on, yes, we can, I'm going to change things, which he did. And so that was the main reason why he was elected. In this case, with other administrations around the world, there is this whole movement now to get rid of those who are in office. The people who are in office, they want to get rid of them. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris was tied to that. So you got the cultural components that she is mixed race, father from Jamaica, mother from South India, from the Chennai area. She's married to a Jewish man. That combination for some people who refuse to accept and look at their own racist concepts in terms of who should lead and who should not. Those were, I think, the foundation of why you have 51% of people in this country who have voted for Donald Trump to date. We know that there are some states that have not been fully counted yet, so that number may
still
change.
Waiting. Yeah. So we're still waiting for those votes to come in. But you know, it for me, I just think the mixed heritage and the fact that she's married to a Jewish man. I'm obsessed with history. I love history, and it concerns me that a lot of Americans don't actually know their history. And let's put it straight out there. Besides obviously the indigenous population, everybody in America are immigrants.
Right.
They've gone over one way or another, but they're all immigrants. And it's like, what's the point of bring me your huddled masses? What is the point of that?
The person who has said it best is Isabel Wilkerson, author of the book Caste, which is very popular here in this country. And her comment was, first of all, you have to not think like yourself from a rational perspective. Just what you just talked about. Don't you know your history? Don't you know we're a melting pot? Why would you vote for someone who's going to deport thousands of people and jail or kill their enemies, etc.? That's rational. The irrational is to understand that people are voting for their caste. In other words, translation, they're voting for the status quo in America, which is a white man in office at the top with money and subjugates underneath, the other always being picked at. That's America that many people know and want to keep that in place. Now, this is going to be The interesting thing, Carole Ann, yes, we are stuck with this administration for now. But as you probably know, by 2040, 2042, America is going to be racially mixed, whether we like it or not. I don't care how many people you think you can deport. This country is already browning, and that is frightening a lot of people. So you got to talk about the fear factor that is mixed in with the 6 points that I made. If people are afraid, whether they're Latino, Black male, white woman, white man, or I should also talk about the Arab community in Detroit that did not overwhelmingly go for Kamala Harris. When you think about all of that intersection of individuals who want to maintain the status quo in America, you're not going to vote for Kamala Harris. And that's what we didn't ignore, but we downplayed. So the whole concept of that kind of class, race, sex, gender identity as well, they've just totally just slaughtered the trans community, which makes no sense at all. But again, that's the other. So you fear the other, and that's what Donald Trump masterfully did. He stoked the fears of other, and he pretty much said, I'm your guy. I'm the status quo. Vote for me. And as he said, you won't have to vote anymore. That is going to fly in our face in the next 10 to 20 years. It will. We are going to pay for his administration. It is going to happen.
Yeah. It's gonna sting, isn't it? It's gonna sting. Listen,
Yes. Yep.
Carole, you and I could talk for extremely long time. But we want this to be watchable and listenable. Where can people hear from you to hear from you more? Where can they connect? Because I know you're a radio presenter as well. You're all over. So, this is going out. It's not just going out in the US, it's going out in the UK and different parts of the world. Where can people hear from you?
I would encourage your listeners, first of all, to go to mssconnect.com, mssconnect.com, especially if they are watching this or listening to this on the 6th of November or the 7th of November. I have my multicultural conference that is going to be presented virtually. And we'd love for participation from the UK and elsewhere, because we are going to talk about this very subject in terms of post-election issues. One of the workshops we're having is, again, this will all be virtual. The election is over. Now what? I have a powerful panel who will talk about these issues. I have a wonderful opening speaker. We have a beautiful wheelchair dance group that will talk to us on in the evening, and then the next day we'll talk about, okay, where are we headed from now with our closing speaker. So timing is everything. This recording will only be available to my MSS members, but mssconnect.com for those who want to watch or listen on either the 7th of November or the 8th. I said the 6th because you'll have your presentation, your recording will be out at that point in time, but we'd love to have your audience to participate. My name, CaroleCopelandThomas.com, where you can find all the other information about me.
Okay. And the conference is when? Online conference
The
is
conference
when?
is tomorrow, the 7th of November and the 8th of November. Yes, so it's here. And I deliberately scheduled it for now, not knowing who is going to win the election. But again, we're going to have a very robust conversation about it. Very much so.
Wow. Well, I'll make sure that I send you this MP4 so your team can pull out a section so I can join you virtually from this, because I won't be able to join you tomorrow. But you know me, I'm always supporting you. I'll always.
You're busy. You're one of my great speakers for the events too. But we have a break in between, so I'm definitely going to. If you send it to me, we'll definitely play it tomorrow. Definitely.
Yeah. Which will be fantastic. I am going to give my closing remarks as if I've been voted for something. Thank you, Carole Copeland Thomas, over in Massachusetts, United States. It has and always will be a pleasure to talk to you. And good luck for the next couple of days, and for the
Thank you.
I know that when America sneezes, we catch a cold, and we are bracing ourselves over across the pond. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
So, what have we got? We've got a convicted felon, a sexual predator, a proven liar, someone with concepts of a plan, but not an actual plan, someone who would strip rights from women, from ethnic minorities, and refugees. Somehow, enough people decided he was a better bet than an immensely more qualified woman whose reputation has not been sullied by criminal and reprehensible rhetoric and actions. I'm not going to lie, it's a sad day for women and for those who value fairness, empathy, and common sense. But you know what? We can impact our immediate environment. We should adapt the leadership style that is not just about speaking up, but about taking time to pause, reflect, and recalibrate. And for what comes next. My name is Carole Whitehead. Thank you so much for listening to my special The Whitehead Files podcast, Across the Pond with Carole Copeland Thomas.